So United drew 1-1 with Young Boys last night, and we are here to work out whether United reserves are good enough to play in the first 11 under Ralph Rangnick. Right then, so we are back. I'm joined by Abdul. How you doing, mate?
I'm all right, mate. It was a bit of a weird one last night. It was just a bit of a laugh in it.
It was.
It was one of them. You just turn up, have a chat with your mates, and you're not too bothered about the result.
Even on the watch along, we were sort of a bit more relaxed, a bit more casual. It was a dead rubber in the sense of obviously we'd already finished first in the group, we'd already qualified. But for a lot of these players, this was a chance to show Ralph Rangnick, the new manager, only his second game in charge. I want to be playing in that first team. And you think about it, now that game's been played, Donny and Beek and Henderson and Ahmad have started as many games for United under Rangnick as Rashford and Bruno and Ronaldo. So whilst they're not first choice, they've had equal opportunity to show themselves. Do you think those players did enough? We're going to go through some specifics, but generally speaking, what did you make of last night?
I thought I'd seen some moments from players here and there, but it was as expected.
Yeah.
It was always going to be an open game. I felt like Young Boys were going to try and get something. I think they had a couple injuries as well on their side from what I read online. So it was, both sides didn't really have anything to play for much, but Young Boys are always going to try and get a win at Old Trafford.
Of course.
It's always going to be like a historic result. So considering the team we turned up with, you got to take that result in a situation we're in. And like you said, it was relaxed. You guys were on the watch along and stuff. And for me, it was the same. I was up in the stands with Adam and it was just nice to have that dead rubber game feeling because I felt like everything's just been stress for United for the past year or two.
Too much in it. So we're going to go through a few players. We'll start with Dean Henderson, someone you wanted to highlight, and we'll have a little talk about his stats and what he got up to yesterday.
So Dean Henderson, there's one thing we can really highlight because I was looking at some of the stats last night. There's nothing much throughout the pitch to look at. But there was a bit of a debate online yesterday about, him coming out to challenge that ball instantly and almost playing that sweeper keeper at times. As we can see yesterday, just noticing it on SofaScore is 3 out of 3. Successful runs out, of course, every time getting first to the ball before the attackers, anticipating that situation. And I feel like it is a worthy debate of having that De Gea Dean Henderson thing because yesterday I was having that conversation with Adam in the stands and he made a good point. He was speaking about how De Gea makes those saves where you're like, that's going to the back of the net.
Yeah.
Like, that's it, it's a goal. He was highlighting the Aubameyang, I think, chance against us. And there's not many keepers that are like that in world football.
No.
Like, I think he's one of the best still at that thing where you're like, wow, like how has he made that save? But I think the game's evolved so much where you got to have your keeper being proactive. And Rangnick speaks about reacting quickly and being, on the front foot in all aspects, whether on the ball, whether it's something, a ball's loose and you got to come out to it. And there's a quote that Steve last week said it on the show about, people have grabbed this quote of saying the keeper shouldn't be involved so much. And I think people take that out of context a little bit because I've seen these German teams and we've seen the type of football that a Rangnick side would like. You look at Neuer, for example, even at Bayern, constantly coming off his line and how much that gives confidence to your defenders. So it is something to be discussed.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he would have left a decent impression, actually, because those were actually good run-outs. Like, he come out and you felt really confident in him getting the ball out. There was one where he played it down the line.
Yeah. And
I think it's important in the modern game to have that. And that could be something. But because of how political it can be, De Gea is such a key figure in the squad. He's been here. He's the longest-serving current player, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, him and Phil Jones, I think.
Him and Phil Jones,
there, but obviously playing player, yeah.
Playing player, and I think they come around at the same time. So if we're looking at it like this, I think it's going to be quite difficult for Dean Henderson to get in the team because of things like that. But it could be a situation where he slowly brings him in. Maybe he plays him in the FA Cup. Dean Henderson does well, continues to do have those moments. There was rumours about him going to Ajax on loan and stuff. And I think if he's not going to play, then bring him in. But he does have that part of his game that I do really like in a keeper. There was a high claim as well he made where a cross where usually
from the right.
And that type of cross, I'm like, usually it's going to hit someone's head. And De Gea, as good as shot stopper he is, doesn't come out.
There was a point, a couple of things. A point, I can't remember if it was the Chelsea game or it might have been the Palace game even, where De Gea saved the ball and it goes right up in the air.
Yes.
And it lands basically on the 6-yard line.
That might be Arsenal?
Maybe it was even Arsenal.
Palace,
one of the recent games.
It was Palace, yeah.
The ball's way up in the air and it's in the air for 1, 2, close to 3 seconds. It lands just outside the short box, and De Gea's still stood on his line.
I remember that.
And I remember saying on the watch song, I thought, if that's Dean Henderson, he's grabbing that.
It's not just Dean Henderson though. It's like the majority of the keepers in the league. Like it's mental because I can't remember it was Palace or something. It was one of the recent games at Old Trafford, and I remember just like that save being just palmed away, and I'm just thinking, all right, he's coming out, and then it was a free header.
Yeah,
whoever was heading it, and I was wow.
Yeah,
like, it's one of them. Mate. It's just to expect the keeper to come out as you would when you watch a game. And in the same games, like in those games, he's made great saves.
Yeah.
So this is where it becomes a difficult situation because what do you value more as a manager? What's more important as a side? You know, if you're going to play a high line in a specific way, you are going to need your keeper to be proactive to a certain extent. And I think we might have seen a moment or two where De Gea did do it in one of the recent games, but you need to be a lot more confident. It feels like when he does it, it's just like, whoa, what a moment for him. It should be like a thing that we see from game to game, like we see with the Edersons and the Alissons and everything.
Someone else who, looking at traits and looking at what they bring to the team, a hugely, not necessarily controversial, but talked about figure, Donny van der Beek. Played again yesterday.
I've seen so many split opinions, and maybe because I wasn't massively, I know I was watching the ground, but I didn't massively focus on each player's performance. Usually I'd go back and rewatch the games and stuff, and I'd only watch the short highlights when I got home yesterday. But from what I've seen, I did like a lot of what Donny did. I know he made the mistake for the goal.
Yeah.
One thing though I will say, and it's not me like blaming Wan-Bissaka completely in this moment, but again, it's going back to being proactive and being very alert in those situations, which Manchester United have been so far from it under Ollie. You know, you look back at the Spurs game, your Maguire Shaw moments. Yeah. Wan-Bissaka yesterday again, and he's done that before. Like, all right, Donny's played that pass. It's the wrong pass into you. But he's almost like turned away in such a weird, lackluster way, and he's not ready to just challenge that. And we know he's a good tackler. So him not being prepared in that moment is it was quite disappointing for me. And again, Donny, he shouldn't be playing that weirdly blind pass. Besides that, let's look past that mistake. I like Donny's intensity in terms of winning tackles. He won 6 tackles yesterday.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
I was impressed by him because my issue is, and why I always defended Delo, and as people can see now, he's coming to the team, he's done well. I'm not 100% guaranteeing we'll see the same with Donny. But one thing that always frustrated me with the way that people rated Delo is he's never had the opportunity to be amongst like a flourishing team when everyone's, you got your Sanchos in there, you got your Rashfords, you got Ronaldo, you got the best players out there. But Delo used to always, like, if we're looking at a couple of seasons back, gets thrown in an FA Cup game with the Phil Jones and League Cup games and stuff. Like, you're not playing alongside the best players, so how are you going to show your best? Because yesterday I seen some good progressive passes. Like, he completed the most passes as well. I think it was 63. So there was some decent short passes. Now, when you look at the passes, the longer balls off SofaScore yesterday, I looked at it and it was 3 out of 4. The reason it does disappoint me, even though it's not a bad start, is because we played so wide yesterday. The wingers were really old, and I thought it was fantastic. We really looked like there was an option when we got on the ball.
Yeah.
And even though Ralph said the players didn't understand the instructions and stuff, which is really nice to hear because I want that level of intensity on the players to really step up their game and understand what the manager's trying to give.
A bit of transparency as well. Like he says, this is what we wanted. We didn't quite get it, but that's what we're trying to do. It's good to be able to understand that and be treated as a sort of intelligent fan. Then he'll tell you what he'll tell you the truth, and you can work that out yourself. Yeah, I think. And I
think we didn't get enough of that. As much as I do love Ollie, and I've always said I've always wanted to do well.
Yeah.
When he spoke, we didn't see enough of that. And looking at yesterday, when we got on the ball, there was always an option on, and there's not been enough of that, whether it's right or it's left. And sometimes I would have liked Donny to attempt that extra longer pass. But I think he
basically said the same, didn't he, Rangnick? He said, too often we played the 5-yard pass when instead we needed to make a slightly longer pass. He said we need to make a slightly longer pass that instead of being pressed by their first wave of pressing, you are then sort of activating their second and third wave. So you can
there was
sort of cut some of that out.
To hit those passes. And this is where it's quite unfortunate in Donny's situation because we know that's not the type of player he is. But in terms of the shorter spaces, I really liked what he done when he received the ball, there was a quick progressive pass inside. And he got some players in good positions, but because, again, the quality, the experience wasn't there, when it's compared to a Sancho or Bruno or Rashford or Ronaldo or the others that could have played with him, for example, in another situation, what happens after that doesn't look great. Whereas yesterday, he actually played some decent forward passes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's very weird split online because I was like, did he play bad? Like, yesterday I jumped on. And people seem to have, I hate, like, you know, going down the whole agenda route. But I think there's a group of fans that, because Ollie didn't like him. And then I think we were chanting his name at Old Trafford last week. A couple of weeks ago at the City game before, like, Ollie had got sacked. There was fans like, I hate this whole like top bred term and stuff like that. Like, as United fans, we're United fans together, but there's just section of United fans that I really feel like weird section of like match going fans that have that thing with Donny, like, because some fans created it as Donny against Ollie sort of thing, and he's not playing it because he hates him. So some people, I genuinely believe, have that sort of agenda against Donny because of it, and it's very weird.
It is weird, and I think sometimes we see it on here where you'll express an opinion either pro or anti-Donny for a particular game, or you might say, like I was saying to you before, that I think as much as he hasn't had as many chances as he would have liked, he also hasn't always been incredible in those games. And it's not necessarily his fault, but at the same time, you can sort of maybe understand why he's not blown you away. But you can't necessarily say it's not his fault, but then also he's not had the chances. So I get the thing, but sometimes you get accused of being anti-Donny just because you say he's not really proven himself yet. But at the same time, you're saying that's because he's not necessarily had enough chances. But, you know, it's kind of somewhere in the middle, isn't it? Where
it is, I agree.
You don't hate him. He shouldn't just play every week just because he's you know, McTominay's not playing great. But there's probably a middle ground there where he has got an opportunity, or he should have an opportunity, and he has got qualities that other players don't have. And I was saying to you before, I think the best Donny we've seen is in the last month or the last 6 weeks. I thought he has been very good in his
I liked it because we've seen different versions. Sorry to stop you. I think we've seen different versions of Donny van der Beek. Like, we've seen yesterday, there was an intense side to him where he wants to win the challenge, he wants to win that tackle, and that's very nice to see in a Ralph Rangnick side. And I felt like after it didn't like really work out from the first season, as in like not him getting in the team, he'd come back into training, and we've seen bits of pre-season against Everton and maybe Brentford or wherever else, and I felt there was that to his game, you know, where he was really, you know, trying to attack the ball a lot more, attack the man a lot more, have that aggressive side to his game.
He seems to be more willing to tackle, diving in more, being more defensively minded, and that seems to be something he's added, which you have to give him credit for. And hopefully, you know, maybe alongside Fred or something, we can see him in the first team under Rangnick soon. But yeah, I don't think it was his best game, but I do think, you know, like you said, put the mistake to one side. Maybe there were some things in there that you could overlook if you hadn't seen the stats.
If he can keep that combative side to his game up, then there are situations like the Palace game where we're chasing that Palace game where he can play Donny van der Beek there. Instead of Scott McTominay, sorry. Like, you bring him on, you're trying to progress the ball a bit more, and McTominay's pushing up anyways. You can bring a Donny in there, and you can still rely on him putting a foot in and tackling and winning the ball and having that intense side. And then against Norwich this weekend could be a good opportunity. If things aren't going well, I expect us to dominate, expect us to turn the ball over. And hopefully maybe Donny comes into that role. But again, I think he's probably going to play the double 10 role. But yesterday was almost a test for him. Be the holding midfielder. Let me see what you can do. And I think maybe Ralph would have liked that defensive aspect to him. Losing the ball was frustrating for the goal and a couple other moments. But he would have liked that part of his game.
Good stuff. I like that. Let's move on to Eric Bailly then. Someone else you wanted to highlight yesterday. You see there's 6 clearances, dribble past 0 times. How does he go from where he is now to being in that first team? Because, you know, Varane, you know, pretty much when he's fit, he plays. Maguire has been shocking this season, but I think in the last couple of weeks, he's just starting to build things back up again. He's winning the ball higher up. He's not making as many mistakes. And then you've got Lindelof, who's been pretty decent as well. Where's Eric Bailly's position in this team?
I think it's quite difficult for Bailly because he's a player that you almost can't rate because he just doesn't play enough, in my opinion, you know, with the injury problems he's had and stuff. But I think even as a fan, he's almost gives you those like funny, reckless moments where he wins the ball and in the weird ways, like the things he was doing yesterday. And I do want to see him do well, like at United. But as a starter, I cannot see him like sort of nail down that spot right now. Because if you look at Lindelof, in my opinion, is probably having his best season yet so far as a start, even though we've lost games. I'm seeing parts of his game that I've not seen before. There's a lot more intensity and aggressiveness.
Yeah, it seems
to his game.
It really pushes up, you know, gets right into the strikers
and when he wins it, he brings
more.
it down, and he's a lot more comfortable to play those, you know, maybe knock it past a man a little bit and win it higher up as well. And I think that those are things that are going to be appreciated by a manager like Ralph Rangnick and the style of football that he's trying to implement at Manchester United. This is where I think personally, my point of view, we're going to see either Rafael Varane and Maguire or Victor Lindelof and Maguire. I don't think he'll drop Maguire.
Really?
I don't think he'll drop Maguire. I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not against it because I think, especially if we're going off face value, what we've seen recently, you're going off what Varane's offered and what Lindelof have offered. Those two, yeah, they could start. And especially, I think Lindelof's form has impressed me, no doubt. And I've always been some sort of fan with Lindelof because of what he offers with the balls in behind. And Rashford, a lot of the time, makes these runs, especially at Old Trafford. Sometimes the camera, you won't see this. And Palace game, a lot of people frustrated at Rashford, but he kept making runs.
Yeah.
And it feels like he always makes them runs when he knows Lindelof's on the ball because he can hit them. And I've seen him system a couple of times. So it's going to be difficult. But I feel like when it's like a header or a challenge in the middle of the park, when teams trying to play it over the top, I feel like Maguire is going to be his guy there. So it's good to have these problems. And again, if Eric Bailly, he can play that other role as the fourth choice. And it's nice because I feel like a lot of these players have been getting the heat recently. Just before we finish things off, a lot of these players I think have been getting a lot of heat in terms of making mistakes and stuff. But it's all about the structure. It's the same thing with pressing. When the structure is great, you don't even need to work as hard.
No.
Because the structure is fine. You don't see Liverpool with Salah, Jota and Mane. They don't run around like headless chickens. No. People think they're extreme hard-working players. Yeah, they do work hard off the ball, but they're not to the extent that people make them out to be. It's not like Bruno running all over the pitch, left, right,
because there's no wasted
back.
Energy, is there? Because it's all being pointed perfectly in the right direction, which is hopefully what we can see.
And it's the same thing. It's whether people on the ball, whether it's off the ball, it's all about the structure. And I think I'm starting to see bits of that with Ralph within 2 games.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Cheers for going through that. Let us know in the comments whether you think anyone we saw against Young Boys can break into that starting 11. We didn't even get to Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw, who were supposed sort of, what 2 of the first names on the team sheet under Ole. Now, question marks there as well. Let us know in the comments your thoughts. Did Donny do enough to stake a claim for a starting place in the first 11? Thank you, Abdul, for coming down, sharing your time, sharing your stats with us. Thank you to everyone at home for watching. We'll see you in a bit.